call this meeting to order. This is the agenda for the meeting tonight is for the Connersville Economic Development Commission. First order of business is election of officers. I don't think so. I got put in the middle. I think Patty would be good. Okay. Do we have a president and vice president? Is that what you do?
I think that's what you do.
Probably president, vice president for a secretary.
Nominate each other and go through the regular thing.
Okay. I nominate Patty Boswick for president.
I second that nomination.
Okay.
And I nominate David Bates for vice president.
I second that nomination.
Then I nominate Stacy Fox for treasurer.
And I second that nomination.
That would be secretary, I think.
Secretary.
Or secretary.
Secretary or treasurer. All right.
Someone needs to move that the nominations be closed.
I'm sorry.
Move that the nominations be closed.
I move that the nominations be closed. All in favor?
So moved.
So moved.
All right.
Where is Rick, John?
He's just coming into town.
So he's in the building, or close.
Yeah. So there was a motion and a vote on the officers?
You got the officers elected.
Yeah.
Okay. Economic Development Commission, I'm pleased that you're here tonight, and I'm excited that you all were willing to step up to the plate. We're plowing new ground because we haven't done this before. And as you know, we're talking about tax increment financing. And we have with us today Gary. And Gary, I can't remember his last name, I just call him Gary. But he comes from the firm that does the financials for the city of Connersville. And Gary will give you a quick overview just about tax increment financing here before we get started. Gary? I'm Ball and Associates.
Yeah, my name's Gary Milan. I'm a partner with Ball and Associates. We're CPAs. I've been called a little worse, Mayor, so that's fine. Don't apologize. Our role is to been working with the city officials in helping the city craft an incentive package for was that they were looking at acquiring the facility that was the Ford plan, and looking at ways to provide an incentive to the company, and the determination was made to use a concept called tax increment financing, and it goes by an acronym of TIF. So if you hear the words TIF, it really just means tax increment financing, and the process is it allows through the Redevelopment Commission, to capture the new property taxes that are created by that investment and place those into a special fund. And once those monies are placed into a special fund, then we can use those monies to pay debt service on a bond. And the bond would actually be issued through the Economic Development Commission would make a recommendation to the council. The bond's actually issued through the city. But it's the dollars that are going to be captured through the TIF that's going to be the way to pay that bond back. TIF bonds, unlike water bonds and sewer bonds, they're very difficult to market. Because all the revenues come from one taxpayer. So if something happens to that one taxpayer, there's no money to pay the bond. So it's not like a water bond or a sewer bond you might be accustomed to. So what the plan is here is that we're going to ask the company or someone related to the company to actually buy the bond. And for the city, that's a great deal because the city only needs to promise to pay that tax increment to the principal and interest on the bonds. So if there's not enough money to pay the bonds, and that would only happen if Wayzata isn't paying the taxes that we would expect them to pay, well, then they bear the risk of that non-payment. That risk never falls on the city. It's always with the company. So from the city's perspective, it's a very safe way to craft that type of incentive. The calculations that we've made are still preliminary in nature. They'll still need to construct the improvements. They'll still need to buy the equipment. They'll still need to do all the stuff that they need to do. And we're really not going to know exactly what those revenues are going to be until that process is completely done. The assessor, it has to be built. The assessor has to assess it. All kinds of stuff still has to happen. But based upon our discussions with the company, we believe that our first revenues would be received in 2015. And we believe that that revenue will be about $120,000 in that year. And then it'll grow over the next few years until it reaches about $263,000 per year. And over about a 20-year period through the year 2023, I plan to be retired by 2023, so I don't think I probably won't even be alive by 2023, truth be known. But over that time period, the city should collect about $4.8 million. And $4.8 million can then be used to repay that bond. And there's going to be two parts to the payment, just like your house. Part of it will go to pay interest, part of it will go to pay principal. And we're in discussions with a company right now to determine how much of those dollars go to pay principal and how much of those dollars goes to pay interest. But for example, one of the scenarios that we've been discussing is that the interest rate would be 5.5%. Well, if the interest rate is 5.5%, that means we could borrow about $2.8 million. So that's roughly the size of the bond issue. It would be around $2.8 to $3 million, somewhere in that range. And we think that the interest rate is probably going to be around 5.5%. But again, once the bonds are issued, the only promise that the city's going to have is that to make the TIF available for payment. And to the extent that there's not enough TIF to make the payment, that's not the city's problem. That's the company's problem at that point. And that's kind of fair, because the only reason there wouldn't be enough TIF is if the taxes weren't as high as they thought they were going to be, and so they have a benefit because they're paying lower taxes. So it all kind of works out. And this is a process that several cities and towns and counties throughout the state have gone through, where we work with Barnes and Thornburg, with the Honda project up in Greensburg. We work with Toyota down in Gibson County, AK Steel, Spencer County. So we do these all over the state of Indiana. So it's a pretty common method of doing that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have one. Does this only pertain to the property itself, or does it pertain to the equipment that goes into that?
Very good question. It really pertains to both. So in Indiana, we tax both what we call real property, and real property is land, structures, which is buildings, and personal property, which is equipment. It's the personal property. And part of this process is to identify capturing both the taxes from the personal property, or from the equipment, and from the real property as well. But really do both.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
We didn't have any officers. I left Gary just go ahead and tell them what we're all about.
All right.
So that's a quick, brief summary of how you're doing it. I think you probably all heard of TIF before. That was put in place to help cities, counties have incentives. That's the only way we can build an incentive to attract people to get here without having all the risk. And in this case, the company or somebody related to the company has agreed to buy the bond, so they're taking the risk. So now I have with you Mr. Rick Hall from Barnes and Thornburg, who will walk you through the rest of your part. Rick, they have elected officers. They've been explained about TIF and how it works. Gary's gone over the tentative numbers that we're using, so they're ready for you to walk them through what they need to do.
Okay, that'd be great. Mayor, if I could get you to sign these, which are two of each. They're actually their official appointments. Okay. Well, thanks. My name is Rick Hall. I'm an attorney at Barnes and Thornburg. And have you talked about the transaction in general, or the whole why we're doing this, or?
No, we just told them how it works.
30,000 feet.
Okay. So as you are, I'm sure, aware, there's the Visteon facility has been acquired by the city a couple years ago. They've attempted to remarket it, did so through Carbon Motors, and that fell through. And now the city has title to that facility through extensive negotiations and the effort of the mayor and John Baker and others. They've reached agreement with Wayzata to sell that facility to Wayzata for $1. And in exchange for the taking ownership to the facility, Wayzata is committed to invest up to $12 million in new improvements and equipment in the facility. And then also they have agreed to most importantly, create 309 jobs by the end of 2018. So the city and the city council approved and the mayor executed an agreement that calls for the transfer of that property to Wayzata with those commitments that they make with respect to the job creation. If they don't create the jobs as required by the end of 2018, then they have to pay the city a portion of the value of that property, a portion of $4 million. So if they create 80% of the jobs, then they have to pay us 20% or $800,000. As part of the incentive for Wayzata to locate in a facility, the city has also agreed to provide them with TIF financing. And it sounds like Gary gave you a little bit of overview of how TIF works. So what this is saying is that the money that they invest into that facility and the taxes that are generated from that, as well as the taxes that are generated from the facility itself just becoming taxable. Right now it's tax exempt because it's in the city's name, but when it moves over to Wayzata, it'll become taxable and that will generate new revenues. All those revenues will be captured and they're committed to the company to help reduce their cost of locating in the facility because there's some renovations, et cetera, that have to occur. So the city has agreed to provide those TIF revenues for 20 years to the company, and the way that you monetize that is through a TIF bond. So as Gary probably explained, the city would sell a TIF bond that's going to be bought by a lender that would has some relationship with the company, but is independent at the same time. Would provide approximately, we're looking at about 2.8 million, is that right? Dollars that then the company could use to invest in the facility. And those bonds then will be repaid from those future tax revenues paid by Wayzata. There's no other tax money or other funds of the city that are pledged to the repayment of those bonds. It's solely those tax revenues resulting as a product of Wayzata buying that property and then operating it and making more investment in it. So the way that TIF financing gets accomplished is it has to be approved by the city council, and then it has to be approved by you as well. This body, the Economic Development Commission, is established by statute in this type of financing that is not payable from any city revenues, but rather is an economic development financing. This body's set up to make a recommendation to the city council that you move forward. So that's what we're going to ask you to do this evening through these resolutions, is adopt a report that's required by statute, and then make a recommendation to the city council that they move forward. Now, of course, as I said earlier, at the onset, the city council's already approved the purchase agreement with Wayzata that contemplates this financing. So before we get into the details of your resolution, do you guys have any questions about how the transaction works in general, or what your role is? Or?
Do you? I don't have any questions. You okay, Stacey?
I understand. I believe.
Okay, maybe first thing is a housekeeping item.
Julie won't be here for a little bit to sign these.
That's all right. Okay. She can do it tonight. Okay. That's fine, when she gets to the meeting. But why don't I get you guys just to sign your certificate of appointment. And I don't know all your names, but this isn't too hard to figure out. It's probably David.
Yeah.
And are you Stacy or?
I'm Patty.
Patty. Okay. So there's just 2 copies. If you could sign right there.
Okay.
And then there's the second one.
All right.
This is just your formal oath of office by statute. Thank you. So, thank you. David, are you the president since you're in the middle? Or?
Actually, Patty is.
We voted on officers after we sat down, so. Should we switch?
So you got here late?
No.
You're left-handed anyway.
Okay, so the next thing on your agenda is by statute you're required to hold a public hearing. So as president, you ought to formally open the public hearing with respect to this project.
Okay. As president of the City of Carnesville Economic Development Commission, I now call the public hearing of this meeting.
Great. So what you have before you, as I mentioned earlier, is the first thing is you have a report. And this is required by statute, and this just describes what the project is that's going to be financed. Do you guys have that, this one-page report? Yeah, there you go. And this just describes how it's weighs out as acquisition and renovation and equipping of the facility located at 4747 Western Avenue. It also, by statute, you have to determine what kind of infrastructure is going to be necessary for them to occupy that. And there's no city-funded infrastructure that's going to be necessary. It's all either exists or will otherwise be provided for. And then you have to find what the cost of the project is. And as I described earlier in the sale agreement, the company's committed to invest $12 million by December 31st, 2018. Of that, you're only going to finance a portion of that. And in the approving documents, we've set an amount not to exceed $3.5 million. As Gary described, it's probably going to be closer to $2.8 million. But to avoid having you to have to come back in the future, we just provide a broad number for authority. And then the last, well, two more findings. One, you also have to make a finding with respect to the jobs, and it's the 309 jobs that I mentioned, and that has a payroll based on the company's numbers of approximately $8.8 million. And then finally, there's no other businesses that would be adversely impacted by this project because there's no comparable business in town. This report is actually approved as part of the resolution that you have before you. So turning to the resolution, what this resolution does is it describes the project and the whereas clauses that we've been over. And it talks about the city's issuance of bonds in an amount not to exceed $3.5 million. And then it makes certain statutory findings that this is within your jurisdiction, that it's going to create jobs, that it's an economic development project, things of that nature that are required by statute. And in Section 3, you'll see it actually approves this report that we just went over. In Section 4 and 5, authorize the issuance of the bonds in an amount not to exceed $3.5 million. And then Section 6 authorizes the execution of documents, agreements, and approves their form that would evidence this bond issue. And those will all be prepared and have been prepared on your behalf by myself. And in those documents, they explicitly state that there's no liability of any member of the Economic Development Commission with respect to the financing. There's no city funds pledged to the repayment of these bonds, other than the TIF revenues that are generated from that site. So as part of my duty as the city's council, I make sure that in those documents there's no liability with respect to each of you on an individual basis. And then finally, this resolution also authorizes any member of the commission to take any other actions that are necessary to implement this financing. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
quick?
I'm okay.
If there are none yet, to solicit whether there's any other comment from the public, since this is a public hearing.
Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak?
What's the definition of a job?
It's a full-time equivalent of a job, and I think we may have actually spelled that out in the agreement itself.
So it's a full-time job, these are?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Is that good enough? Okay.
Now, the 309 are full-time. There may be some part-time, but the 309, in order to meet the quota, is full-time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments from the public, then you should formally close the deem that the public hearing is closed.
Okay. I now formally close the public hearing of this meeting.
Okay, and then if there's no questions from the commission, we request a motion to approve this resolution. And like I said earlier, the approval of the report is encompassed in the approval of this resolution.
I make a motion that we approve the report
Second that motion.
And the resolution.
and the resolution.
Yeah.
So we just call for a vote.
Okay.
Say all in favor.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay, great. Let's just, how do you number your resolutions typically, John?
1301.
What's the next number?
2013-01.
Okay.
Yep.
2013. Okay, that's all we had for you this evening, so.
I'd like to speak to them before you adjourn.
Yeah, sure.
Number one, I'd like to speak to each one of you, thanking you for helping us with this. I know in the future, as we go down the road, you're going to say, I had a part of that. And when we asked you to step up and take part, you willingly said so. And I know we've been working with this for months. And to come in here in 20 minutes, get a grasp of everything that's going on with these two experts, it's difficult. But I really do, and I know the citizens of Connersville and the City Council and the Board of Works appreciate that you stepped up and willing to do this. And I think as you go down the road, you'll be proud of your community. So with that, I think you're ready to call for an adjournment.
Yes.
You can ask for a motion to adjourn.
I ask for a motion to adjourn.
I second that motion.
Are you?
I make the motion that we adjourn.
You have to vote on it. So all
Yeah, you have to call for a vote.
Okay. All those in favor of adjourning, please reply by stating aye.
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 Okay.
You can slam the gavel.
I know. Do I have to say anything or just do it?
Yeah, just say meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Very good.
Call to order the City of Connersville Redevelopment Commission. All are present. We need to, if you received your packet in advance, to approve the minutes from our previous meeting. If there are no objections.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. The purpose of our meeting tonight is public hearing regarding the resolution making certain amendments and declaratory resolutions and economic development plan for Wayzata Economic Development District. And we have two resolutions that we need to consider. First one is certain amendments to the resolution and economic development plan. Rick, is there anything that we need to have from you on that, or is there any questions from the board for Rick after you read through these? It's resolution 2013-04, which basically is changing the name of the area.
That's right. It accomplishes a few things, as you know. At your prior meeting, you adopted a resolution that just amended the name of the economic development area and the allocation area to the Wayzata Economic Development Area and TIF allocation area. It also then adopted a supplement to your plan, which provides for this project that we talked about. And then finally designates Wayzata as a taxpayer from which personal property taxes can be captured as TIF. After your approval at your last meeting, it then went to the Plan Commission, which approved it, and then it also went to the City Council for approval, and they also unanimously approved the amendment. So now it's back before you for public hearing and final consideration. Be happy to answer any questions.
We have no one in the audience that wishes to speak for or against it. So if there are no questions and everyone understands what we're doing here, we need a motion to approve Resolution 2013-04.
So, Mr. President, if I be in order, I move that we adopt Resolution 2013-04.
I'll second that.
Carol seconds it. Any questions? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. And 2013-4 is adopted. Now we have Resolution 2013-5, which is the resolution pledging certain tax increment revenues for the payment of the revenue bonds.
Sure. So in the prior matter, the minutes should reflect that there was no comments, that the comments were solicited from the public and none were provided as part of the public hearing. On this matter, this is now pledges the TIF revenues from this area to the actual bonds that are going to be issued. As you recall, under the agreement between the city and Wayzata, the city has agreed to provide to the company the TIF revenues from its investment, as well as the TIF revenues that are generated by the facility becoming taxable, moving from the city's name to Wayzata's name for the next 20 years. And the way that that's accomplished is through a bond issue. So the city will issue bonds in an amount not to exceed $3.5 million. Those bonds will be payable solely from TIF revenues. Because you are the body that is charged with TIF, this resolution formally pledges to the repayment of those bonds, the TIF revenues from that area. So also working on this financing has been Gary Malone from Umbaugh, who's here this evening. So let me introduce Gary just to share a few words about TIF and how this would work with the financing.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Again, my name is Gary Malone. I'm a CPA and a partner with Umbaugh & Associates. As Rick mentioned, these bonds will be payable solely from the tax increment. That's the new real and personal property taxes that are going to be paid by the company. The only obligation of the city is to make available those TIF revenues. No other tax dollars, no other funds of the city will ever be spent or pledged to the payment of these bonds. This is all there is. In discussions with the company, we've made some estimates of what we think that tax increment might be. Now, the truth of the matter is we're really not going to know until they complete all that they're going to complete, that they buy all the equipment that they're going to buy, until they install everything, and all that is assessed. So it's going to be a while before we really know what those actual numbers are, and they're likely going to be different than what we're projecting. But at this point, we have made some projections, and based upon those projections, we believe that we would start seeing revenues in 2015 in the neighborhood of about $120,000, and then those revenues would grow to about $260,000, and that over about a 20-year period, that's going to provide about $4.8 million of revenues with which to repay bonds. And we've been in discussions with the company and the company's lawyers, and we're thinking that they're thinking of a bond issue of about $2.8 million. So if we have $4.8 million in revenue, and we have a 5.5% interest rate, we can only borrow 2.8 million because the rest of it has to go to pay interest on those bonds. If something should ever happen and those revenues are not sufficient, then it's not up to the city to make up the shortfall. Those payments will simply not be made. Then at a future point in time, if there is revenues available, then great, you can get caught up at that later point in time. But if that day never comes, you still have no more obligation to make any additional payments. So it's just a $2.8 million bond, the 5.5% interest, and it's just the TIF that's going to be generated over that 20-year period. Any questions on?
Okay.
Just one other thing I wanted to point out in the resolution, in terms of the TIF pledge, that in the TIF, the money that's pledged to the bonds, before that money goes to the bonds, there is up to $5,000 that's withheld that the commission can use to pay administrative expenses. So as you move forward with this and collecting the TIF, et cetera, that gives you a little money to get professional assistance from UNBLA to make sure that it's done appropriately, and your commission has money to take care of that.
That's what's stated in section 1 here.
That's correct.
Now, does that go through Julie, or does that go through the other commission?
That would be approved by you because it's TIF revenue.
Okay.
She would actually pay the claim, but this board would approve that.
Okay.
Mr. President, if I'll be in order, I move that we adopt Resolution 2013-05.
Second?
Or second.
Okay. Any further questions, concerns? All in favor of adopting resolution 2013-05, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. Unanimous, it so passes. Any other business that we need to take care of? Anyone else have anything?
I got something
Yes,
to
Mr.
talk
Mayor.
to you a minute. Again, on behalf of the city, I am really pleased that you fine people have stepped up to do this, to give of your time and make this happen. Down the road, I think you're going to be very proud when you drive by that place and say it once was kind of in shambles, and now it's waking up and coming alive. Secondly, you're going to get criticized on the street because you're using tax money. You need to be able to understand and be able to tell people that you're not. This TIF, tax increment financing, was put forth by the state legislature several years ago. Many communities use it. It's a way of having an incentive to entice people to come to your community and to redevelop. That's why you're called the Redevelopment Commission. So you need to have that clear in your mind, because I can tell you over the next couple of years you're going to be criticized. Well, did you? That tax revenue? Yeah, the county treasurer's not going to get that tax revenue. It's going to be to pay those bonds. But without those bonds, they couldn't refurbish that building at that area. So I'm just so pleased that you accept this, that you've come down here, and on behalf of the city, I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If nothing else, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Before we start our meeting tonight, we're going to have an invocation. The invocation is going to be given by a member of the clergy of Connersville. We invite anybody that would like to do an invocation to call my office, and we'll set it up so you can do it. Whether or not you participate in the invocation has no bearing on the business that you've come here tonight to do, and feel free if you don't want to participate. You absolutely don't have to. We ask each week that if somebody would like to come, they're certainly welcome, all religions, creeds, whatever might want to be here. So with that, we're also going to stand and we're going to do the pledge. So tonight we're going to stand, and Councilman Tom Creech will lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you remain standing. Tonight I'm going to introduce to you Ben Dilworth, and Ben is with the United Methodist Church at Elk Run. And Ben, if you'll come to the podium, We do have a special request today. Mike Bishop, our Board of Works member, had surgery today, and we'd like for you to include him.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right. If you'll join me praying as you're willing. Almighty God, you promised in that ancient promise that it is the truth that sets us free. And I just ask that as this council meets together in their discussions and deliberations, Lord, and in the decisions that they make, Lord, that you will guide us all toward truth, towards grace, and towards a greater freedom. And Lord, I just ask for your blessing and strength and wisdom and discernment and guidance on this city, on this council, and in all their work. And Lord, today we especially want to lift up Mike Bishop. Lord, following that surgery, that your grace, your strength, your comfort, your power, your peace would be with him, with his family and loved ones around him. And Lord, that you will just pour out a blessing of strength on him as he's in recovery after that procedure. And Lord, we ask for all these things. And Lord, I ask them in the name of Jesus Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Steve. First order of business will be pull out your cell phone and check to be sure you got it on silent. We'll officially call the City Council to order. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Risch?
Present.
Councilman Weber?
Present.
Councilman Shomel?
Present.
Councilman Nobby?
Present.
Councilwoman Montgomery?
Present.
Councilman Creech?
Present.
Councilwoman Stevens?
Present.
All 7 are present. Let the record show that we have a full council and we are ready to do business. We're going to deviate from the agenda a little bit tonight because we got some guests that need to go back to Indianapolis. But we're going to have a nice presentation while they're still here. So I would ask Judge Flum if you would escort Patsy Miller to the podium, please. This is unofficial, Patsy. You don't need to be afraid. Very unofficial. And you can't blame me for all this because some of your friends cooked some of this up too. Your friends, okay? Patsy Miller has been a great citizen and is a great citizen of the city of Connersville. Through her wisdom, she has brought our community center to this town. It's been there now for 10 years. She also has been active in getting the gardens up there and many other things in the city of Connersville. She's worked in her church, St. Gabriel, and things are going over there just great. And she has willingly given of her time and her money and her presence to the city of Connersville. We had the elders luncheon at the bicentennial, and she wasn't able to come that day, but we sent a bicentennial pin home, and I understand you lost it. Well,
What was it down in my pocket?
guess what? Mike?
Yes.
The community center stands in your park. I'd like you to present Patsy with another bicentennial pin.
And I promise I won't use it.
I promise I will.
But we're not done with you yet. We, this council and this community wants to say thank you for all that you've done. And one of the ways that we're allowed to do it is by presenting you with a key to the city. And so tonight, we are presenting you with a key to the city. And if you'd like to step forward.
Thank you. I'll have to take care of my friends. Thank you, everyone.
Wait a minute, Patsy. Patsy's husband, John Miller, was a colleague of mine. He was a funeral director here, had the funeral home here for many, many years. Patsy worked at Stance, 30 years?
I was in one job 40 years.
40 years. And she was a pillar over at Stance, one of our companies that still flourish today. And all the different things that she has done for the community, she certainly deserves the recognition. And you absolutely look beautiful today.
Thank you.
You must have got your hair fixed just for the
I
occasion.
did. And the women will know I got a perm, so it helped. Had I known.
Well, it looks great. We have one more presentation. I gotta find it here. We understand you like the bicentennial flag, so we thought you ought to have one.
Oh, thank you.
You can display that proudly.
I will. This is my home, and I will.
Would you like to give a speech to the crowd that's come here for this tonight?
I'll wait till I get home.
Well, normally we'll have 2 or 3 here, Patsy, in this room, and tonight it's almost full. They came here because we were recognizing you.
Oh, no, it was... Well, I didn't think. I came as a tag-along, and I'm certainly glad I did. John and I love Connersville. This is our home. I wouldn't live anyplace else. And if you could just get the young people to know what we have here. We've got everything. You're only an hour and a half away from Cincy or all the cosmopolitan. You don't need all that. It's right here. If they will only realize it.
Put her on the Economic Development Board.
No, but it's a pleasure to live in Connersville. And everybody is doing a tremendous job, and I thank you. I thank you.
Thank you for coming. I need some help now. Connie? Gary, would you like to get out in front?
Sure.
We have 2 people.
Only time I wear shorts. Come on, Tom Creek.
I can say a word, Doc. I'm just sitting here.
I'd like for you to present a bicentennial to Mr. Rick Hall, one of our guests here tonight, and I want you to do Gary Malone for us.
I like your tie, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to get a picture of that.
I wore this. I know.
I'm taking
That's exactly
Thank you all.
Thank you. She's not a slave.
Well, it's always fun and enjoyable when you can honor somebody in your own community and somebody that has struggled and worked as hard as she has over the years to make Connersville better. So tonight, we're going to continue to make Connersville better. We have Rick Hall and Gary Malone. Gary is with Umball & Associates. Rick is with Barnes & Thornburg. They've been working desperately, very hard, working to get this Lizada agreement with the TIF and transfer the property, and we keep moving forward. And tonight, I think we'll be done after we've done our part here. We just wait then for the property to be transferred. I can assure you they're working out there and things are moving. Tim was in town 2 days last week, and I spent a lot of time with him, and things are moving forward. And they're moving forward because, I hate to admit it, because the lawyers are helping us push it through. And a big smile on Rick's face. So, Rick, come up and walk us through what you want us to do with this ordinance.
Thank you. And thank you for the bicentennial pin. It's probably been, what, 6 or 7 years now I've been working with you, Mayor, on a number of different projects, and very much enjoy it, and congratulate you on your bicentennial. On to more mundane legal documents, but on a very exciting topic of the redevelopment of the Visteon site. As you know, back earlier this summer, in May, I think it was, the council approved, May or June, the council approved, and the mayor executed an agreement to sell the facility to Wayzata. And as part of the incentive for Wayzata to purchase the facility, the city agreed to provide them with the TIF revenues that are generated from their new investment in the facility and from the facility moving from tax exempt status in the city's name to taxable status in the company's name, also creates TIF that was pledged to the company for 20 years. So over the past 2 months, the Redevelopment Commission has been working to make the amendments necessary to that TIF area to capture the TIF from Wayzata's new investment so that it could be pledged to a bond issue. And they completed that process earlier this evening. Also earlier this evening, the Economic Development Commission recommended the issuance by the city of up to $3.5 million in bonds to provide the actual incentive that you agreed to in the sale agreement with Wayzata. So what you have before you this evening is an ordinance of the City Council which approves the issuance of those bonds in an amount not to exceed $3.5 million to fulfill your obligation under the sale agreement. These bonds wouldn't be issued until the actual sale takes place, the due diligence is completed, and title transferred. But as the mayor said earlier, this would be the final public approval in order to accomplish that. So before I get into the details of the ordinance, let me introduce Gary just to say a few words about TIF and how the financing is structured.
Likewise, thank you very much for the pen. I really appreciate it and enjoy working with the city of Connersville. My exposure to the city of Connersville has been through one of my partners, John Seaver, who's from Connersville. So I'm glad to meet you finally. So, we've had some discussions in the past, but remember, TIF is an acronym. It stands for Tax Increment Financing. So the way this would work, the Redevelopment Commission would be empowered to capture the new real and personal property taxes from the project over about a 20-year period. We believe that we'd start seeing those revenues in about 2015, and through 2033, we would expect those revenues to be about $4.8 million, and that $4.8 million is what the city would be pledging to repay the bond. We've been in discussions with the company, so if we know we have $4.8 million worth of money, TIF revenues, it has to go to pay both principal and interest. So we've been in discussions with a company with about a 5.5% interest rates, which means we could borrow about $2.8 million. So the way this would work, Redevelopment Commission would collect the TIF revenues and make that available to make the bond payments. The bonds would be purchased by the company or someone affiliated with the company. The only promise to pay from the city is just from the TIF revenue, from no other sources. So we're not taking tax dollars away. We're not taking tax dollars away from the schools or anyone else. These are the new taxes that are being collected, and this is the only promise. So in the event that there is a shortfall in revenue, the city doesn't write a check from anyplace else. It's the company that bears that risk at that point in time. This is a technique that's been used all over the state of Indiana. It's used for many, many projects just like this, and it's a safe way to do it. It's a good way to protect the city and provide the incentives necessary for companies to make investments. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about TIF.
So the city's not getting anything now from that, and they haven't for several years since this deal closed, right?
That's a very good point. Right now, the city owns the property, so you're receiving no taxes at all. And the theory behind TIF is that it builds tax base over time. So over the next 20 years, the benefit will be from jobs and other benefits, but after that incentive is paid, then all that assessed value then flows back into the tax base, and it'll go to lower taxes, lower property taxes for the most part. So,
What if, for some unforeseen circumstances, the company was no longer in business after 20 years? What happens then?
if the company is no longer in business, if there's anything there that's, and if anybody owns it, anybody else owns it, there would still be taxes paid on that at that point in time.
Would the company then still get the money that was
No.
paid? Okay.
It would just be for that 20-year period. Mhm. Okay. Any other questions?
Sounds like a good deal to me.
Very good.
It's a way of us providing employment for our people. And as I told the Economic Development Commission this evening, the state has allowed us this incentive, and we could not do this on our own. We don't have the $3.5 million to put into this, but we can make this happen. And as Fran says, without hurting us at all, because we weren't getting anything anyway. Now we're going to have all the different taxes that come off of the employment out there, and we're going to have them spending lots of money in Connersville because they have pledged to us they're going to try to buy everything they can here and try to use as many people in that they can here. So it's a win-win for us. I will remind you, as I did the Economic Development Commission, when you go on the street, a lot of people don't understand tax increment financing. And so you need to be prepared when they tell you, well, you're using our tax money again, hurting our schools, like Gary said. No, we're not, because there was no income there at all. And really, the people that buy the bonds are taking the risk. They're getting an interest, but they're taking the risk because they have to pay the bonds back. So I hope you guys are prepared, because I know what happens. We've done this before, and people don't quite understand how it works. So I hope each one of you now, as we've moved through all these steps, understand how it actually works. We use the taxes that would have been going to the county had it. The company just moved in here and took it. But it's in shambles up there, and they're going to redevelop it. That's why we have the Redevelopment Commission. And they're going to redevelop it 12 million plus. And then it's going to be valuable. And I've always said, in a city, we can't count on 2 years, 5 years, 4 years. You've got to look way down the road. We're 200 years old. Look down the road 50 years, and you'll see where this really makes a point. I'm sorry, Rick, but I want them to understand it, so we don't get criticized.
No, absolutely. And as you recall, in the negotiation of the sale of the building, the provision of this TIF incentive was critical in terms of getting the company to commit to the site and redeveloping the building. So I'd be happy to take you through the ordinance specifically, unless there's any other general questions you'd like me to answer. Okay, this ordinance before you approves the issuance of the bonds in an amount not to exceed $3.5 million. That's the maximum amount of the bonds. What the actual principal amount will be is driven by the TIF revenue projections as well as the interest rate. So the interest rate is still being negotiated with the purchaser. So I think the way that it likely will come out is Gary is estimating about a little under $3 million in bonds. This just provides an outside parameter. From the city's perspective, the important point is the TIF for 20 years is what's going to repay those bonds. The ordinance then also approves financing agreements that are necessary in order to issue the bonds, and makes certain findings that are required by statute in order to issue the bonds under the statute that we're operating. And if you look in Section 4, this sets forth certain parameters of the bonds, including the maximum amount of $3.5 million, that they mature not later than 21 years after their date of issuance, that the interest rate doesn't exceed 7.2%, etc. And then of critical importance to everyone in this room, in Section 4B, you can see this ordinance states, and this same statement is riddled throughout the financing documents themselves, that The bonds and the interest thereon do not and shall never constitute an indebtedness or charge against the general credit or taxing power of the city, but are special and limited obligations of the cities payable solely from the revenues and other amounts derived under the financing agreements. And in other words, those financing agreements provide that they're payable solely from the TIF revenues. So there's no other tax dollars or funds of the city that are pledged. As Gary described, in the event the TIF revenues are not sufficient, it's the bondholders that take that risk, and they would be left holding the bag, so to speak, and no city money would have to be forwarded to make them whole. The remainder of the resolution authorizes the sale of the bonds on the terms that are negotiated by the mayor and the clerk treasurer, and then they authorize any further action that's necessary to implement the financing, and say that this ordinance is a binding contract with the bondholders. As the mayor said, this is the last step in the approval process, but we would not actually issue the bonds until such time as the sale of the building occurs and the company formally takes title and moves forward with the project. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Rick?
Well, I think we're really fortunate, Rick, to have this happen, because most cities have to come up with some big dollars to bring a company of this magnitude to their city, I believe, don't they?
Absolutely. Often what's required is, at a minimum, is some infrastructure dollars. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if they do go forward with a TIF financing like this, they have to back it with other public money in order to make it work. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do that here. And that's in large part because of the foresight that you had several years ago, taking title to that facility and funding a cleanup fund that could take care of the environmental problems that made it an asset that is marketable. I mean, without those actions years ago, the plant would have deteriorated.
Yes.
And this would not be possible.
Any other questions for Rick?
Do we know a timetable when the company will be taking possession of the building? I know we were on a clock for 90 days. I don't know if they're going to move forward with that.
We actually have an agreement with them that they are actually using the building now. We allowed them to come in. Rick negotiated an agreement, and we have a couple of addendums to it, and they're doing some pre-construction work now. They started today. The roof will be this week. I don't know if they got on it today, but are they on the roof today? Okay. So you're going to see action up there from here on in. We do not have a closing date or a formal closing set. There's 2 or 3 things that we still need. A comfort letter from IDEM. We need an air test inside the building. I've been reluctant to order an air test because we've had diesel engines running in there and taking down the mezzanine, a lot of dust. There's no point trying to do an air test when you have that. Mm-hmm. But estimate, Rick, if things go well, another 30 days we'll be closed.
Another 30 to 60 days, I would say. And like the mayor said, part of this is not within our control because we just have to get IDEM's approval for them to get what's called a comfort letter from IDEM saying that they can take possession without environmental liability, which is just a process that takes some time to work through. But as the mayor stated, the company is evidenced a strong commitment to the project by their willingness to get in ahead of time and start moving forward and getting a good handle on what kind of improvements are necessary so that they can move very quickly once they get title.
In the access agreement, they gave us an insurance certificate and holding us harmless for what they do in there, so they're putting their money into the building. And John and Rick thought it was best to just go ahead and start because we're facing cold weather and they wanted to get started on different things they had to do. For instance, today we were going to try to turn the gas on, but we got to put compressed air in it, check it all out. So they checked all the heaters on the roof, be sure they're going to work. So it's better we get these things done in warm weather than have to climb on the roof when there's snow on it. we're ready to pass pending ordinance.
I move we pass pending ordinance 3046 on
You're
second.
ahead of me, that's great. Okay. We have a motion on the floor to pass pending ordinance 3046. It covers both of these agreements, which I'm sure all of you have read from cover to cover and understand them 100%.
Sure.
Yes, I have.
Yes, you have. Okay. We don't have to have a public hearing, do we?
No, but I would like, if the council would suspend the rules and vote
Yeah,
on
we'll do
adoption.
that. Is there anybody out there wants to comment on this? I always like to have the people, if they want to comment, now's the time to do it. It's better to do it in here than it is on the street. If it's a good comment, we'll take it, and if it's a bad comment, we'll take it. Anybody at all?
Seems like certainly a good, solid movement, and any movement is great.
That's right.
Thank you, Jerry. Anybody else? Okay, with that, council, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? We'll have a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Rish?
Yes.
Councilman Weber?
Yes.
Councilman Shomel?
Yes.
Councilman Nobby?
Yes.
Councilwoman Montgomery?
Yes.
Councilman Creech?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stevens?
Yes.
You have passed that on first reading. Would you like to suspend the rules and go on to third and final reading?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second, I think.
Yes.
On suspension of rules, to consider pending ordinance 3046 on suspension of rules only. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody against? That allows us to move forward if you wish.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion on the floor to pass pending ordinance 3046 on third and final reading. Is there any further discussion? None appearing, I'll have a roll call vote.
Councilman Weber?
Yes.
Councilman Shomel?
Yes.
Councilman Nobby?
Yes.
Councilwoman Montgomery?
Yes.
Councilman Creech?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stevens?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rish?
Yes.
Okay, you have passed that on third and final reading, and I will be signing it. You want it signed before you leave?
No.
She'll take care of it. Now, wait just a minute. There's one, while I got you, I'm not gonna, I don't wanna pay for an attorney to make another cut. Rick and Gary are both working on refinancing the pool bond. And we'll be, look at that, in fact, Gary just told me John's working on it today. Okay, we don't know what the interest rate is, but we did know that we were gonna have a net savings, and you don't have any figure in mind yet.
I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay, okay. I also talked with Gary tonight. You know, we struggle with utilities, and each year in May is designated by ordinance that we have to look at our utility charges. Some cities have selected to hire Umball and Associates to just on a regular basis watch the utilities, and on that particular month, when it's due to the council, they make the report, and we just pay so much a month to keep it going, rather than come up and make them kind of do an audit, and we don't want to spend the money on the audit, so we kind of just let it slip. I would like this council to consider hiring them all on a regular basis to continue to do that, and then on the first meeting in May, they'll come in and tell you where you stand, and you won't have to wonder or think you'll know where you stand.
How much is so much a month?
I don't think you're prepared for that yet, are you, Gary?
No, I would, I'll get back, I'll speak with John Seaver, and we'll
Okay.
get back with you on a proposal of what we think it might cost. It's typically less than what a rate study would be on an annual basis, so that's why I'd like to look at it
That makes
from
sense.
that perspective, it's just a little less expensive than.
If it's less, that makes sense.
Takes the political pressure off of you folks too, because when you've got your accountants working on it, and they come in and tell you, hey, this is what you need to keep your utility solvent, he's telling you what you need. You're not just guessing. And we're not spending $15,000 for a rate study at one time. And then we may not do anything anyway.
It also gives you an opportunity to adjust your rates annually if you so choose to do so. So you can make very minor changes in rates instead of waiting 4 or 5 years and having a large rate increase. You can do a little bit at a time, so it gives you that opportunity as well.
Makes sense.
Okay. Well, Rick and Gary, we appreciate you coming down.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else you want to tell us? Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Let's go back to our agenda. Steve Alexander. You think you okay?
Do the minutes.
I was so anxious to get into that one, so I just couldn't.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Got a motion to approve the minutes in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Put that up there, please. We have a man in the audience also that needs to go. Mr. Alexander? Stephen, would you come up here? He is looking at the CEC building, the big 6-story building, about doing some tax, not with our taxes, but with the taxes on the building, to put that into like maybe senior apartments or some other things. That sounds good. That building needs to be preserved, and I don't think any of us in this room believe we can ever come up with the money to get it done. So give them just a quick overview of what you want to do.
Sure, thank you. The name of my firm is Prince Alexander, and we were the architects and construction managers for the foundation building across the street about 5 years ago. Maybe it was longer than that. 6 years? I lost track. Yeah, I guess it was. But at the time we were working with the fire department on trying to come up with solutions back then for the fire department. And we do a lot of work around the state with municipalities, but also private sector development. I want to clarify the word tax. The project financing that we're working on is called Section 42 tax credits. It really doesn't have anything to do with property taxes or city taxes. It's not affected at the city level. But because it is a historic building, there's also historic tax credits available for it. So we have to go through the application procedure at the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, IHCDA, that is the agency that allocates the tax credits for the Internal Revenue Service. And generally, Section 42 tax credits are awarded based on what is called income qualification guidelines. So in this situation where our intent is to develop a senior housing complex there, seniors would be, the rent is based on the amount of income they have that's disposable for rent. So, as I call income qualification guidelines, the rent is not a fixed amount for whoever walks in the door. You allocate rent to the tenants based on their ability to pay. And so seniors that may have problems in their housing situation now would obviously be given preference in this kind of a project. That is not to say that it's a low-income housing project, because a portion of the units will also be market rate. And because of that, the project, and because of the way the state scores it, has to have amenities as if it is a market rate project. So for instance, the amenities that a typical senior community would have would be incorporated into this. The real benefit and blessing of the CEC building is that you have one of the best senior assets there is the CEC. A lot of times communities try to encourage art classes for seniors and crafts and things to keep busy. That's already going to be in there, and we're going to incorporate that program into the building complex. So we're coming up with a real good plan. We've been meeting with CEC. They've authorized us to go ahead and start doing the paperwork, get the application in. The Section 42 tax credits are competitive, so we have to go in and we're competing against, you know, every other city in Indiana for the tax credits, but we think we've got a pretty good chance at it. And I wanted to let you know we're going to have to get zoning, so we're going to have to go through planning and zoning for that. We're not really looking for any other money from the city to do it. It's just there's going to be some permit process and approval that we're going to have to go through along the way. and it has to be shown that it's part of the city's plan is to encourage the development of senior housing or a historic district or things like that. And so we're going to have to work with the planning staff to get all that worked out. So if everything goes well, we're going to go in for the fall application round, which would be awarded the actual award would be the 1st of January, first week or so of January, before we would actually hear if we were granted the tax credits. I met today with the state Department of Natural Resources Historic Preservation Division about their interest and ability to declare that a historic landmark, because it is not currently on the National Register, and to get historic tax credits it has to be on the National Register. So Janet Banks is going to she got a box of historical documents apparently that kind of document the history of that, and I've got to get those, and we have to put together the application. Has to go through the Department of Interiors for that approval. So we have a lot of paperwork to do to get the whole thing going, but with your blessing and understanding, we're gonna go after this and see if we can get this thing done.
I'm excited about this because I think we all want to see that building preserved. Too much of our history has been lost, and if they can do it and get it done that way. And this isn't only being done in Indiana, it's being done all the way across the United States. I have a building that's in the process where 2 or 3 months ahead of you, and the building I'm doing up there, we're doing the same thing. We don't have the historic value. And in the old days, they were called low-income housing, and we're getting away from that. And it's a good way for people that have money to invest to get tax credit, and it really helps communities. So I want each one of you to kind of voice your opinion here before we spend much time, or before he puts a lot of time in it. If you're willing to kind of think you're going to go along with him, he has to have our blessing in order to make it move forward. Not tonight, we're not going to ask it, but I need to know how you all feel.
So when you said senior housing, what kind of policies or regulations or whatever does it?
55 and over.
Have to be 55 and over.
Yeah.
How many apartments would fit in that building?
We don't know exactly just yet. Right now it looks like about 50 will go in there.
Doesn't it require a lot of work right now, fixing it up?
Interior, yes. Actually, when the CEC renovated, they put all new windows in it, put the roof on it, and did the exterior. So it's really interior work. But there's a lot of framing and air conditioning and things like that's got to go in. Sprinklers.
Will this cost the city any money?
No.
When you said 55 and above, you also mentioned there were some market apartments. Would those be 55 and above too, or those?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. The under the fair housing laws, there's very definitive requirements, applicant scrutiny, and when you make the declaration that it's for seniors, and you say it's 55 and over, there's a whole sort of cascade of technicalities that go along with that for compliance. But the focus is on, I hate to use the word seniors because I'm 56, so, you know, it hurts, but it's a fact. And
You're bragging, I don't want to hear it.
The percentage of people over 55 is growing every day.
Every day, every day.
You're a child.
Yeah. So we're really enthused about it. You know, I really like Connorsville. We've been real active, you know, over the years in helping the foundation on a variety of things, and so it's an opportunity for us to try to help with another project and bring some of the investors to town and help kind of change the image of that side of town and maybe open up a new gateway and connection to the downtown and sort of a new perspective on how to make things happen.
I've heard from the left wing. How about the right wing?
Sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Graham?
Have you completed any projects comparable to this?
Several.
Have you?
Yes.
Tell them about your project up the clock.
That's not the same kind, but it's
No, I know, but
yeah, Bern, Indiana. We were hired by the Economic Development Commission in Bern, Indiana, to develop a tourist attraction called the Bern Clock Tower and Münsterberg Plaza. And it really took about 4 years from beginning to end to do this feature, but they wanted to build a clock tower 175 feet tall on the corner of the two intersecting highways in Bern and create a new event plaza. And so trying to figure out how to help them raise the money and build that as economically as possible, but you can't build a 175-foot tower cheaply. Because, ironic, the first weekend it was done, after we set the very topmost piece on with tornadoes, we're going through there and it had 90-mile-an-hour winds, no damage. But similar projects, Park Hotel in Rockville, we've done, School 80 in Broad Ripple, Decatur. If you look at our website at reesealexander.com, you can see all of our apartment projects and a lot of historic renovations. In Decatur, Illinois, we did a school that we made into senior apartments. We've done several in Paoli and French Lick as part of their downtown revitalization. So we've got a lot of track record. We know how to get through all the regulatory requirements. Our development partner on it is Crossroads Development. There's a gentleman named Mark Young that actually just left the state in October of last year, and he was the director of housing finance. So he was the guy who used to scrutinize the tax credit applications. He is now our partner on this deal. So we feel we're good about our chances of getting through the scrutiny at the state.
Good luck with the state.
Yeah, it's always thrilling.
Yes. Thrill a minute.
But look at all of our projects. We have a lot of really neat.
That's
neat
great.
projects.
Thanks. It's a lot of experience. That's good.
In terms of your projects, you guys had any problems renting those out or keeping them full capacity?
Usually the demand is much greater than the number of units that are available. We were involved in a project in Nashville that had 76 units available, and there was a waiting list before it was done of 180 tenants in Nashville, Indiana. And so you see the people are out there, they need better housing and there just aren't options. And so this is a win-win situation.
Okay, I wanted you to hear the whole story from him.
I don't think Connie spoke yet. Connie hasn't.
Connie hasn't spoke. Connie.
Oh, I did,
Give a
well,
speech.
I'm fine. I think it's a wonderful idea. And no city money.
No city money.
No city money.
We'd like, eventually to see that area, the streets kind of reoriented and kind of improved to make, we want that building to feel like it's more a part of the park instead of feeling more like it's part of the industrial.
Did you not notice, we just built a new building across the street, store building, restrooms, just seeded it all in new grass.
That's what got us here, that incentive projects like that get attention.
We took the big stump out, and we have a flower garden there.
I saw that.
We're building the monument over there at the,
Good, pretty park.
And the folks that live on the north side can watch the street department people work.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll be getting calls, I'm sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Looks like I'm getting anywhere fast.
I need the
Resolution 2013-40, first aid.
Actually, it's not first aid.
It's what?
Cemetery.
cemetery instead of first aid.
I've
Okay.
got mine so out of whack here.
No,
You're
it's,
okay.
it's just wrong on there. But if you look at the resolution in cemetery,
Okay,
it's really not a big deal.
what's your pleasure?
What's this from?
It's from an accident, somebody hit something along the fence, and they had to pay restitution.
Cemetery.
Cemetery.
Mr.
City
Mayor?
cemetery.
I move we set resolution 2013-40.
I'll second.
Guess we should just look at it and say, thank God we got $353.10.
Yeah,
That's right.
really.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. Resolution 2013-41, final tax abate H&E cutter grinding, and we're gonna have a public hearing. As I said to you last week, or 2 weeks ago, H&E machine is applying for this to, I got mine all messed up, but they're applying for this to buy a new lathe, and they are doing great guns up there. One of you toured up there in the last few weeks. Somebody toured it. You did you? David? No. Okay, somebody else. Maybe someone on the Board of Works. But H&E machine is growing. Zach Miller and J.D. Miller. Zach's the boy. That's the one that plays basketball. But we're open on a public hearing. Is there anybody like to speak about it? Anybody for it or against it?
How many years is it for? 3 or 5? It's length there.
5, isn't it?
Is it 5 on machinery or?
Yeah.
His personal property at $168,250 is the value.
He has steadily grown up there. He runs a nice operation. The place looks nice. I think it's a great deal. Anybody else in the public hearing? Let the record show that no comments from the public hearing.
What was our years on that?
5, I believe. She didn't put it in there.
Mayor, I move to accept pending ordinance 2013-41.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? On pending resolution 2013-41, a resolution that would allow H&E machine 5-year abatement on this piece of equipment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried.
Do you know if it's adding to employment, or I haven't seen it before, usually a company.
It's gonna keep employment.
Okay,
That's what.
maintain.
I wrote 5 in on my copy.
Being down in that area.
Resolution 2013-42, final tax abatement on residential public property. Jerry Hathaway.
Don't do too many of them, we need taxes.
Jerry, if you'll come to the podium.
A lot of them have. Yeah, we've had probably 10 of these.
Before you start to speak, Jerry, I'm going to open a public hearing on this resolution for tax abatement on residential property. I think the council heard all about it last time. They kind of understand it. So we're going to have a public hearing. So we're opening a public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to speak about it? Jerry, you're public, so if you'd like to speak.
I would just like to maybe clear the record a little bit. My tax bill will be exactly the same next year, whether you approve this or not. I do not benefit, as I told you, with a lesser tax bill. The only way I benefit, as I said last week, is I sell a lot if the house is built. And in the event that a house I build doesn't sell for 2 or 3 years, then the tax abatement would kick in and help me there. At that point, it's already too late to put money on it, so a little bit helps. But anyway, as I've heard you say win-win a while ago, and I heard somebody else say win-win a while ago, and I think I said win-win 2 weeks ago. The city win-wins, because if I don't sell a lot, you get nothing, the minimum tax. And if I sell a lot and I build or somebody builds, as I mentioned, the 100,000 rolls over 8, 9, 10 times. You'll net out $8,000 worth of taxes in the 5 years, whereas the other way you might net out 50. You'll net out $300 or $3,600 in utilities. The gas company may or may not benefit. Certainly television will benefit. And Duke Energy will benefit. So as I say, it's a win-win-win for them. And it's a win for the home buyer because they do get the advantage starting in the 2nd year of the abatement. So
This abatement thing was started when I was on the council. Fran was on the council. Gary was on the council. We put this in because there were no houses being built in Connersville, and this was an incentive to build houses. And
Bill Conyon did it when he was here.
we made this promise to our builders that we would do this, and I think it is a win-win. It slows down the tax coming onto the piece of property by 5 years. It's put in 20% each year, but it's a sure thing.
After
the way
5
we sit,
years, you get
full tax. The way it is today, what's the minimum tax on a lot?
Well, it might be $8, $10, $12, depends on the front footage, how they do it, so. Well, much average it out of 10 in our last call.
Jerry, you sold some houses since we put this into effect, haven't you?
Yes.
Did this have a bearing on?
I think everybody that bought was pleased to have it.
Okay.
Did it have a positive influence? I really couldn't tell you. I messed up on one because I didn't realize the timeline had passed. But yes, I think they're happy to realize there is a little carrot out there beyond, you know, the interest rate.
This is for 31 lots in the Tarkington.
I just put them all down. I just put them all down, and I don't know which lots you might want to buy and build on. But I'm kind of hoping that some of this new business, and it all sounds very good, folks. I'm going to tell you, that's most encouraging 3 or 4 weeks I've heard in a long time. And TSC, I'm certainly glad they're here. I happen to know about it, I think maybe before some of you did, because I was in Indianapolis at a TSC, and the young girl said, "Where are you from?" "It's Connersville." "Oh, we're going to be in Connersville," she told me. I said, "How do you know that? We don't know it over there yet." She said, "Well, it's been out in our newsletter, our business letter." So anyway, they were disseminating the information before apparently they had totally made a commitment. And certainly this thing at the airport I read in today sounds like another little thing that you would feather in your hat. So.
On the flip side, there are some blanks that need to be filled in. Can somebody help me on C? 2 blanks there.
I haven't seen it, so.
Okay.
Where are we?
A single family or duplex project fails to comply with applicable standards set forth in the blank guidelines of Fayette County. The top of page 2.
Right. We'll probably have to address Diana regarding that. And she's usually here and gets those completed, so I'm frankly unfamiliar with it, but I would suggest consulting with her. It's standard language in these.
Right.
It always is completed, and it's nothing that changes the intent or the efficacy of the document, so I think it can be done as soon as she can lend to it.
What about number 5? What goes in there? Do you have any idea?
Let's look.
What one did you ask about first? C?
C, yes, the top.
That'd be the same answer, I believe. We need to address Diana, who works on these abatements.
I've forgotten how our ordinance is written, and I can't remember. I know you can put a garage on an existing house and get an abatement as long as it's connected.
I emphasize to you again, only the house is abated, not the property itself. So. And I'm sure they might be referring to APC or city construction guidelines.
And this will run through December 31st, 2018, according to this.
I haven't seen it. Sounds good.
You want to see this, Jerry?
No, I'm
okay.
I have a question. You were referring to $100,000 as in the value of the house. Do you have a minimum out there?
Yes, I have. The city has a minimum I have to build. I think it's 1180 square feet, I believe is the minimum.
Okay, which translates into?
My cost to do that is roughly 50,000 labor and 50,000 materials.
Okay.
Plus it went up 10% this past year. But, just a ballpark. Okay. And I was only using that for easy math.
Sure.
I think what that's saying, if I remember one of my big memory here, that if the duplex or the house does not comply with the guidelines of Fayette County, then it would not be eligible for the abatement. And I think that's what it means in both places.
Okay.
I think we're referring to APC
Right,
guidelines.
right. In other words, if you built a project and it wasn't in the right zoning, or if you built a project and it didn't comply with what Fayette County requires.
Yeah, I think under C it would be the
That's
building standard guidelines.
Are there
And then,
duplexes out there?
No, I have none in my subdivision.
Okay.
Jerry, do you
Not
have
allowed.
a standard set of houses that you build?
I have maybe, I suspect I've built 15 different floor plans. I have built a couple of more popular ones at least 3 times, I think.
And what's the average square footage?
1,200. I'm right on 1,200. I started out at 2,400, then I went to 2,200, then I went to 1,800, and then I went to like 16, and so I decided I wasn't going to compete with the other people that were building at these levels. So then I decided that I would, basically I get two types. I get people that are wanting to downsize, older people, and I get first-time homeowners. A lot of maybe, single women and one child or something, whatever. But basically I get the beginners and I get the ones that are coming down.
Okay, without further ado, we don't have any.
Incidentally, I'm going to say something about this project this guy said.
Let me close this public hearing here. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing on this pending resolution 2013-42. Now, go ahead, Jerry.
My mother-in-law lives in a similar situation to what this last fellow was talking about for the 6-story building. It's a nice program. Hers has some federal guidelines connected to it, but it's all based on income. I think she only pays $200 a month or something like that. And they've got a waiting list like you wouldn't believe in that little town of Brook, Indiana.
They're doing this all over the United States. People are investing in this. They get the tax credit, get the wipe it off your tax. And it's a heck of a good program. How long it'll last, I don't know. But
certainly for someone that she's no longer married, her husband died, and she moved in from the farm, and this was like ideal for her. And they have a host of what she needs to be, and Meals on Wheels stop on, and things like that.
Okay, what's your pleasure on
Mr. Mayor,
resolution 2013-42?
I would like to make a motion, we pass resolution 2013-42.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to pass resolution 2013-42. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Jerry.
All right, thank you all.
You're welcome.
We need an additional appropriation for $6,000 in the first aid operator. We'll open a public hearing for the additional appropriation of $6,000 for the first aid EMS. Would anybody out there like to speak? Anybody at all?
It's overtime.
None appearing. We'll close the public hearing. We'll turn it over to the commander. Why do we need it?
We're running low.
Why are we running low?
Working too much.
I've noticed in the last 2 days we've done 2 intercepts again. Is Franklin County paying for the intercepts? What are we charging?
$156, I believe it is around. I would have to look to make sure, but I think that's what it is. We have a contract with them.
And they guarantee it to us, we don't have to go back to the individual?
Right. Well, what we do is when we put our run in the computer automatically sends Franklin County a copy of our run. She turns it over to their billing agency, who in turn takes care of getting us took care of.
Dave, well, because I don't know, I'm not beating you up. Now you say you charge Franklin County $150.
I believe that's what it is.
Then you also charge the patient too?
Nope. No, we're not,
This is mutual aid, and we meet them halfway. Yesterday we met one on 121, I presume it came out of
Aspen.
Aspen. The ambulance from Laurel brings it up, but they're not qualified, they don't have people, so we meet the ambulance, take the patient on, and today we took one out of Franklin County.
I believe off State Road 1, I believe it was.
Franklin County actually bills the patients, so.
Yes, Franklin County takes care of the
They're
billing.
responsible to pay us.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Yes.
We went through this
That's what I was
a few
getting
years ago and looked at it, we weren't being paid at all. And then we negotiated this fee, and how many times a month are we doing this?
We intercept probably on an average of 3 to 4. We're second call. Fayette Regional is first call. If they don't have anything available, then we're notified.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that is I was thinking, you may have been on council at that time, when they were kind of taking advantage of our good nature and made it change around.
How much would they be paid for that, Ron?
I don't know what their billing is, but if it was through, as we bill, it would be roughly $600.
And we get 150.
Yeah. But we don't, all we have invested in it was the personnel, and then depending on the medications they use. As far as the transport, the other equipment is all provided by Franklin County. Our truck is usually still in service, so if a second call does come in, the truck can go ahead and respond back into our county.
Transfers in Fayette County most of the time?
Transfers, you mean?
I mean, do we pick them up in Fayette County, or do we have to cross into Franklin?
If we cross any, it's maybe 2 or 3 mile, if that. If we're on State Road 1, we might end up at like Blooming Grove. It's just wherever there's an area big enough to meet them at, so we can get the trucks off the roads.
Okay.
Kind of bothers me a little bit, they can bill $600 for a run like that, and we get $156. We do have a lot of risk in it.
It certainly doesn't cover it, does it?
As far as the medication, that kind of stuff, yeah, it comes real close to it. One of the issues with it is if we can charge more, the hospital is actually cheaper than we are. That's why they get first call. So because they do it cheaper. I don't exactly know how much, but I do know they are cheaper.
What's the ratio of how many times though you get called versus them? I mean, how many more times do
they seem to go quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the exact numbers, but we hear them quite regularly.
But they're not, the reason why they need us is because they're not qualified to give certain medicines and what have you. So
right.
You do have a lot of medicines involved, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Pending ordinance 3045. We've had a public hearing. We need to put $6,000 in there from the general fund. What's your pleasure?
I'll make the
Move
motion.
we accept pending ordinance 3045.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt pending ordinance number 3045, $6,000 going into overtime for the first aid unit. Any further question, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Would you like to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Second.
On suspension of rules only, to suspend the rules and consider pending ordinance 3045 on third and final reading. Suspension only. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Would you like to move forward?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to move forward and consider pending ordinance 3045, putting $6,000 in overtime out of the general fund. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We have one more ordinance, pending ordinance. We did it, didn't we? Get that up at the top. Department reports. Anybody need a break? Tom?
I'm sorry?
You need a break? I think we can finish this up in another 15, 20 minutes. Do you need a break, Nancy?
I'm good.
Yes.
You need a break? Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. Meeting will come to order. Okay, department reports. Superintendent Mike Plowman in the park department.
Hello.
Hello.
Monthly report, revenue $41,598. Attached is our monthly expenditures. There's quite a bit this month, $104,000. A lot of that is the new industrial park building. If you look, $5,500 was the labor, Steve Dunsel, who built the shell, and what was the other line item? There's some $231, $2,500, a lot of materials and those type of things. Utilities was $9,000, and this is pretty much the final for expenditures for the pool concessions and all that kind of stuff. So next month should be a lot lower.
Have you figured what we got in the building over there?
Not yet, because we're still got a few invoices out.
Okay, but the building's complete.
Pretty much, yeah. We update industrial park building. It's pretty much ready to go. We're moving in our concession coolers and all that stuff tomorrow. We're just doing some little fine painting and those type of things, but everything's working. The restrooms, everything's ready to go. Our goal was to get it ready for the slow pitch league, which starts, I have the 18th, but we moved to 25th. We're trying to get some grass to grow before the season starts, if that's possible. Other activities going on. July was a busy month for us with Bicentennial, the relay, fair. Right now we're finishing up youth soccer sign-ups. Actually today was the deadline. And our summer slow pitch church league is over. We have about 14 teams, and now we're starting our co-ed league for the fall. Is there any questions?
The Roberts building is beginning to generate a little bit.
It's starting to, yes.
We just really put it on the market after the bicentennial.
Right. It's being booked a lot with the play. They're using a lot of days for practice and those type of things. So when we get that through, it should open up even more.
Sure. That's good.
The park secretary told me the other day, I think it was last weekend, both buildings were booked all 3 nights.
Right. Yeah. So it's starting to...
It's a lovely building to do different things than the other building.
Mm-hmm.
In his report, we're getting ready to present you with a budget. I talked to Julie. The Miller building is going to have to be carpeted. And I asked Julie, I said, should we put it in the budget? She said, no, we don't have any idea. But I'm telling you right up front, this winter, we got to work on getting that done. The carpet at the doorways and the halls.
We're repainting that too.
Yeah, is wore completely out, and we don't want that to get behind and get in shambles like some of the other buildings do. So we're going to have to recarpet it. And maybe it'll be your desire to take that on the riverboat or something, but we're going to have to face it in the next few months. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Police Department.
Law reports, 1,007 citations issued were 12, 1 ordinance violation, 2 warnings issued, 12 personal injury accidents, 40 property damage accidents, 0 fatalities, and 84 arrests.
Hey, Dave.
Yes?
That's not correct on the overtime for July.
Yes, it is.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Over $1,000 a day?
Well, I think the regular bicentennial overtime was right around 19, wasn't it? 19,000. And if you add the existing number, it'd be about normal what regular overtime runs. But it was 32,000. I'm going to have to approach you again in the future, I think, don't we? All right, wait. Okay, I wasn't here last time. I'm sorry, I wasn't here last meeting. I knew we were going to do that, so I missed that.
You won't be here the next time either.
No, I will be here next time. But
you know, I've been looking at that figure now for 2 weeks because I knew you guys would not like that at all. But we had no choice. We absolutely had no choice. We had thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment downtown, thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment up at the park. We had to protect it. We had so many people mingling and moving from one place to the other. Just on fireworks night alone, I think we had 6 or 8 officers in the park. There were thousands of people in that park watching the fireworks, if you were there.
Man, we didn't have any problems at all.
Yeah, we did. One 7-year-old boy gave us trouble.
Okay. other than the one 7-year-old boy that caused problems. We didn't have any adults that didn't give us any problems. I think everything went real well. I've got a lot of comments on the police presence, and people felt very secure and everything else, and I think my officers were very courteous and kind, and it worked out pretty well. And so, any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
To change the subject. The ordinance violation, there's just one. What is that? What was that? I mean, what
I don't know.
kind of
I'd have to
things?
look it up, see which one
Is
it
that,
was.
does that
Ordinance
involve you
violations
guys?
could be a lot of different things. They could be anything from your dog running loose,
Okay.
you know, to your property, you know, something like this. It could be several different things. I'd have to check to see which ordinance violation it is. But we have a lot of ordinances, and officers occasionally do write ordinance violations versus state citations.
Parking in a fire lane.
Okay.
Just stuff like this that we can cover under, and then they pay through the city versus paying it to the state. So
Okay.
that's I don't know what it was right off.
Okay.
So
Okay. Well, it just caught my eye because we had last meeting, we had talked about the continual garage sale, yard sale.
that could be an
Grand.
ordinance also, but we haven't really had. We've had a couple of them that's we've went and talked with in regards to ongoing yard sales. That we used to have one up on Western Avenue, and then we used to have one up on Park Road, Park Avenue that a neighbor up there complained about constantly all the time. But I think most of them we've kind of curbed them. We try to go talk to them first and make them realize that they are in violation and try to cease with overdoing
Yeah.
things.
You got my message the other day.
I did.
Concerning there was a playpen that was out at the curb with the trash toter. And I suppose it got mentioned that wasn't gonna be picked up.
Well, I noticed, you'd be able to save that for the street department, because there's a lot of people who put a lot of trash out next to them, totes, and they don't pick them up. So I don't know what extent it goes from there. Now, if it's an ordinance violation, or excuse me, if it's a house that's been, we deemed, we've sent our letters off and stuff like this, and we have to send a crew over to clean something up, it's one thing. But usually we go talk to them, Neil or myself will go over and talk to them and tell them they need to clean it up, or they can get wrote an ordinance violation, and they usually take care of it pretty quickly. And we get them all the time.
Right. Well, I started with him,
Mhm.
and he passed it to you.
He passed it to me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't go over, I don't know what they do with it. What do they do with it? They evidently do something with it? I mean, after you picked up the tote, I mean.
No, it's not,
Oh.
if it's gone, he must have taken it because we didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't there anymore.
They must do something
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we talked, you have more of a presence,
If
telling
somebody's
them.
got a bunch of trash out there and they're taking the tote and it's continuous being there, they'll hear from us.
It's kind of
And
the
they'll make some
situation on
arrangements.
Grand Avenue day that we had, and.
Right.
You guys helped me with that.
Mm-hmm.
That
With
looks a
kind of
lot better
situation.
now. They've
Right.
done a lot of cleanup there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, we had a deal with a lady up on 2000 block of Vermont. The people vacated a house and left old furniture and trash bags and garbage and everything out there. And of course, it was a rental, and we got a hold of the owners and owned the rental and got them up there to clean the mess up. And they were called once, and nothing happened real quickly. We called again, and next time O'Neill wasn't as nice. So.
You let O'Neill have a gun?
Pardon?
You let O'Neill have a gun?
No, he don't have a gun. Would you like for him to carry one? We discussed it. He just wants to carry a 44 Magnum or something.
Thank you for your report, Chief.
The monthly expense for the police department, $225,946.86. Congratulations, Chief.
Pardon?
I say, good luck getting that much next month.
Street Department.
Any questions?
No questions.
Yeah, I have questions, probably.
Some overtime too much?
I saw some overtime. Can
Yeah,
you?
$76 is way out of the hand.
Yeah.
$1,800 it gets down to police cars and things like that we're working on.
Well, this was for July, so we had a holiday in July too, so the trash.
Yeah, the trash truck, and we had a person for that, but your overtime for that would be your holiday, your trash, your one person for that.
$151,563.80 you spent last month.
Pretty easy to spend when you're working on a lot of the stuff.
Yes. That's all I have.
Was the blacktopping in there too?
No, it won't be till next time.
It was in today's, it was in claims, right?
It's in the claims that won't be paid until next month, right?
It was paid today.
But it wouldn't be on there though,
No.
until next time.
Here's
$88,000.
all the things they did, everybody read what they did during the month of July. The small totes are in and we're delivering them.
Those are about halfway out now. We've got some that want their big totes back.
Transfer station, still operating down there?
We hope so.
Did you change the sign yet?
We have a new one ordered.
Better hurry, it'll be obsolete.
Well, I noticed recycling's up a few. It's at 44 tons. Usually we run around 40, 41.
Yeah,
so
it'll fluctuate for whatever reason, ran from 41 to 45.
Number of weeks too, in the month, because sometimes we pick up an extra day, next to Thursday of the month.
Fire department, Troy.
I'd like to start off saying thanks to all the other departments for helping us through a very busy, a very emotional month. We used part-time firefighters, 19 days for approximate saving of $6,500. We had 90 total runs, 391 hours of emergencies, 22 inspections, 8 investigations, 10 pre-planned tours, and 263 hours of training. I broke down the overtime for you, bicentennial, that was to make sure we followed fire codes and code enforcement. Fire watches, inspections, very busy time.
We were mandated by the state fire marshal's office, we had to inspect every stage every day. It was very, very intense. Most of that came about because that stage fell down in Indianapolis and they put all these new rules on us.
Plus we had to have people enforcing the zones around the stages. So we had some costs for overtime.
Do you have some people off sick?
We have 3 on sick leave right now. One had surgery, one is going to a specialist, and the other one will be back in 4 weeks.
Is that one of the reasons why your overtime was $12,765?
Well, the bicentennial took up about $7,426. We had the 2 fatality fires, which we had $3,100 in overtime there, and just the rest was pretty much about what it runs. So.
And actually, I think the guys have just been off. That's just been.
Yeah, they just started the tour on the 20th of July.
Yeah.
So.
It's just part of the spill.
We've been busy with the spill, but this isn't costing us no money right now.
We haven't received any money either.
Julie, I noticed there's no per line item for the fire department. Where does?
There should be.
There isn't, that I can find.
Retirement, it's down at the bottom,
Is that what it's under?
That's where we pay those out of.
And we pay how much percent?
19.7%, I believe. First class firefighters. Same for police.
Any other questions?
Cost of running the fire department, $205,794.42. I noticed the telephone thing was way up, but it was way down last month, so it must be balancing out.
Dale?
Yes.
Thank you. MS Commander. I don't know if I told the council that we were denied the ambulance grant.
For the month of July, our expenses for the city share was $44,625.35. Our income was $17,757.98. for a total of $26,867.37, and we made 234 runs for the month.
When's the next grant cycle?
Well, we were hoping it should be about any time, but we haven't got the official word, so we're assuming it's going to be more toward fall.
We made an ambulance payment. How many more do we have?
2 Oh, about 30. So we're going to know about 30,000.
We make 2 payments a year.
No, we just make one.
Okay.
How's it running?
So far, not too bad.
Talking to Chris about that too, we're working on that, see what we can do. It's just waiting to happen, we got it down 3 times. It's the history of those engines, they run for a while now. You gotta tear the whole cab apart, tear it down and fix it, runs for a while. Anything else for Dale? Thanks, Dale.
Thank you.
Channel 3 TV, last but not least.
For the month of July, we had 7 hours, 39 minutes of meetings and almost 15 hours of production in mostly bicentennial. One of the other things that we did, I did not include on here, which I probably should have. We provided PA assistance to the bicentennial wherever they needed it. I just had several different PA systems in the back of the vehicle, and we took them wherever they called and set them up. So we ran that for the parade and several events in the park, things like that. Whatever they needed, we took care of in audio and video. That's all I have.
Did a good job. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Old business. The only thing I got in old business, we tabled the third reading on the ordinance for the economic development money. If anybody wants to consider that tonight or keep it tabled, what's your pleasure?
I think we'll keep it tabled.
Put that in the form of motion.
We tabled it in that.
Did we? Is that what it did say? Okay. Nobody wants to oppose
Well, I
passing?
don't know what direction we want to go yet. I don't believe, do we?
I don't think so.
If our pool bond payment comes down, then we'll have, isn't that tied into that?
That comes from edit money also.
Yeah, so we will potentially have more money.
Not necessarily.
No, or we won't have to pay out as much.
Depending on what the
No.
county
We
gives
wouldn't
us.
pay out as much, but
Yeah.
that's all contingent on what the county
What we
commissioners
get.
decide to give us. So if we're not paying economic development, that money could potentially go down.
Julie, the motion that we tabled, do we have to take action on that before October? When we're doing budgets, we don't have to?
No, but
Okay, and that's the edit money for 2000.
we don't budget edit money.
Okay, that's for 2014, correct?
No, that was for this year.
Well, that's for this year.
Okay. Any other old business?
Where are we at with John, can you tell us where we're at with the property up north there, that old rail bed?
The same as we were the last time we talked. The abstract company is still looking into it. I discussed it with them again when we closed the Pramco transaction a couple of weeks ago. And the mayor was with me, and you might recall, Mayor, we were told by the owner of the abstract company that they were working on it. And that was about as far as we got. So, they're working on it.
You're on that committee, aren't you? You might push it a little bit. Seems like how much gets done once you push.
We wouldn't hurt at all to go talk to Jane Beaver. And I talked to her, but, you know, she sees me every day. Maybe a new face might help.
Miscellaneous business, Nancy?
No.
Tom?
Yes, sir, I do. I had talked to Melissa Friday I got 2 complaints from some folks that live in the 2300 block of Virginia Avenue. Apparently there's a couple of fifth wheels that's parked over in a parking lot at 23rd and Virginia.
Is that the one on the church? It's private property. It's private property and there's nothing we can do when they're parked on private property such as that. And so, for instance, if you had a fifth wheel or something parked in your backyard, and you had electricity and stuff running to it.
I didn't know that.
I'm not so sure you're right, Chief.
Well, is it being occupied? That's the question.
Pardon?
Is it being occupied?
I don't know if it is or not.
I think it is.
It's a violation of the zoning ordinance if it's being occupied. For
For
over a short period of
All I
time.
know is we went looking in there, looking for something on it, and we didn't find anything.
It wouldn't be in our ordinance, it would be in the.
In the zoning ordinance. Yeah, and it would be, they're allowed to occupy those in a driveway or a parking lot or a yard, I guess, for a relatively short period of time, but not for long term.
Is that something Bill McDaniel has to
Yes,
address in John?
yes, he's the,
So should I contact Bill?
well, he's the investigator and enforcement officer of the area plan
Folks asked
commission.
me about it and I told them I'd bring it up.
Yes, Bill McDaniel, 825-9808.
Thank you. I'm good, Your Mayor.
I don't have anything.
Dee?
I'm good.
You're good. Fran?
I have nothing, thanks.
I'm good.
I have
Connie?
nothing.
Okay. Public, anybody here from the public that would like to speak? Melvin, you'd like to speak about something? No. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Rudy, you're just being too quiet.
Looking good, I'm glad something's coming in.
Anybody else? Unappearing? Questions for the clerk treasurer? Give them the timeline on the budget, because I want all 7 to be here.
I'm hoping we can have our public hearing, our first hearing on budgets on the 16th of September, a little earlier than normal. We don't have to have it done until November 1st, but I'm expecting my first grandbaby out in New York, so I'm going to be gone.
That's exciting.
That's good reason.
Seriously, take this serious. It's important that all 7 you hear for that, and, you know, because you're passing your whole budget for 14.
Then we'll have the final adoption the first,
3rd of what?
of October, the first meeting of October.
When do the salary ordinances come before us?
They'll come at the same time as budgets, hopefully. In the last couple of years, salary ordinances had to be done by October 1st, and budgets were November 1st, so it's kind of screwed.
No, they're both
But
November.
they're both
due.
November
Okay.
1st, yeah, they've changed it.
Well, that makes more sense, because we do the budget, and so we do them both at the same time. So the 16th and the 3rd of October are the important meetings that we'll need to hold.
We'll
And then
probably need to have a finance meeting with the finance committee sometime.
I really kind of wanted to maybe, there's some issues with personnel that I've been working on, assistant director over at the utilities, and I would like to discuss that. I don't know if I have a right to discuss those in a private meeting.
I'm not sure I understand your
I want to
question.
talk to them about an assistant. I want to kind of change that. We'll stand by. We'll see what we're allowed to do, okay? Anything else to bring up tonight?
I will be adjourned.
Second.
Got a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against?